What it do, guys? It's D'Anthony here, man, aka Hoodscout, back again for another edition of the Hoodscout podcast. And this is really a unique podcast, a podcast like no other. We're going to have athletes, we're going to have coaches, we're going to have intellectuals, we're going to have media members of all sorts. And don't forget, guys, to like this podcast, share this podcast, and help grow this podcast. This is not just my podcast. This is also your podcast. And the only reason it's going to grow is because you guys are going to be invested in it, guys. Sit back, get your beverage of choice ready, get your popcorn ready, get your dinner ready, get your steak ready, get your vegan meal ready. Tune in, guys. Hoodscout. Peace. Hey, what it do, guys? What it do, man? On this episode, this is my interview with defense coordinator Cal Ward from South Oak Cliff High School. This one, I don't have to say too much. Get your notepad ready, get ready. And this is, just really, really nothing off limits. And I appreciate that because a lot of times, you know, you don't get always the real. This is the real. And it's and you gotta respect the real, whatever spectrum you're on. When anybody's authentic and willing to speak what's true, you gotta respect the guy. So get your notepad out, share this, like this, man, and because this is a unified effort to grow this thing, very organic as well. So sit back, man, and really listen to these gems from defensive coordinator Cal Ward, who spent time at A&M, spent time at Boise State, spent time at a few schools, but now he's back at South Oak Cliff and been there for some years. Very, very knowledgeable, intellectual guy when it comes to ball and the different things surrounding it. So sit back, enjoy this one, man. Hoodscout signing out. Peace.
Hey, welcome back to the Hoodscout podcast. Another edition of the Hoodscout podcast. Really, part two of a great conversation that we had in part one. And like I always do, tell my guests to introduce themselves. So, Coach, if the people don't know you, tell them who you are and where you're from.
Kyle Ward, Dallas, Texas. I'm from Dallas. Went to high school at Kimball. Played Louisiana Lafayette. Currently coach at South Oak Cliff High School.
Coach, let's walk up for just the people who may not see part one. Let's talk about your coaching journey, where you started, and let's lead up to SOC. Give me that little journey real quick.
I'll summarize it a lot faster than last time.
Okay.
Just because we've been through it. Started playing football in high school. I think I played my 8th grade year at Atwell High School. Atwell Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really count it because it was like a superstar studded team.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Started playing at Kimball. Went to Alcorn State as a freshman. Transferred to Louisiana Lafayette my second year. Played football and ran track throughout college, and got a couple of shots on a couple of roster. Couple of teams never made a roster, and ended up coaching high school. Lincoln High School 2 years, West Mesquite High School 2 years, Texas A&M, Johnny Football's last year, Boise State 14 spring, and went back to West Mesquite for a year, and I've been at SOC. Shoot, this was my 7th season. So
okay,
yeah, found somewhere finally. I stuck, and I'm staying put for a while.
Coach, before we get to SOC, I want to say, what do you, looking back on that journey, man? You're a champion now. What do you think them lessons of, West Mesquite and these other schools taught you, if any?
I think a lot of it is what your journey is as a coach. What you're trying to get out of it. Kind of determines what you're going to get out of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
West Mesquite, being an inner city guy, inner city coach, getting to experience the suburbs, suburb culture, how they do things, negative and positive things, that was a big part of it. Lincoln High School at the time I got there, I learned a lot. It's some stops in your career. You learn what not to do. Nobody ever talks about that. And I try not to go into specifics with that, so I don't throw nobody under the bus, but it's several stops, several situations where I learned how not to do things. College, being at Texas A&M and Boise State back to back was they were total polar opposites from a talent perspective, from a coaching perspective. It was a really, really good experience for me. So, that journey makes you who you are. You appreciate even the bad times, even especially in the bad times. They're happening to strengthen you and make you better. You know what I'm saying?
Now, Coach, when people hear A&M or they hear of Boise State, walk me through that. And we're gonna hit on the SOC. That's gonna be a main part of what we talk about. But what's that college like? I mean, that's big time. At that time, was that first year in the SEC for A&M?
Second season.
Year? Yeah. So what is that big machine? What is that thing like?
The first thing you notice is support. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of support, especially as a high school guy coming from the inner city. You notice the difference in support. I play small school ball. I say small school, small Division 1A. It's big time support. Fan base. It matters to them. TV every weekend, especially it was Johnny Football last year. He had just won a Heisman. So just media around, everything was a spectacle. It was very different. In hindsight, it's funny. I was telling somebody this during the season. One of the kids asked me something about it. It gets to a point in football where the number of fans or viewers doesn't matter. In the 2 of the last 4 years, we played Alito at SOC. And that game felt just as big, probably bigger than Texas A&M and Alabama. You know what I'm saying? People get caught up in the noise. And when I say noise, not literal crowd noise, I'm talking about all the extra stuff. But, a big game is a big game, and especially depending on what you're playing for. If Texas A&M beats Alabama, it's not as big a deal as inner city school beating Alito. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, they value that stuff a lot more than we value things where I'm at. And so, big time is our perspective. You know what I mean?
And then right, like I said, we're going to get the SOC. And then Boise State, what was that culture like being? So, I mean, you're a Texas kid, way out west. What is that? What is that football and just culture in general like on that West Coast at that time?
It was totally different than what I expected. You hear Boise, you think of potatoes and country, and you know what I'm saying. And it's far from that. It's a pretty big city with a lot of surrounding areas. A true downtown with skyscrapers. You know what I'm saying? It may not be one of the biggest cities in the country. You know what I'm saying? But it's pretty big. And from a football perspective, it's a winning culture. Structure, organization. I learned a lot of a lot of things that will follow me for the rest of my career. And it's a lot of why they've been so successful with less for the last 20 years.
I got to ask you, Coach, what's one nugget? Give me a nugget. I got to ask you, what's one of those structural nuggets that probably stay with you?
I'll give an example, structural organization, but even more so, Coach Harsin, he's the head coach at Auburn now. But, a lot of his big things were small things, but they were very detailed. I remember him actually sitting and counting the minutes of the minutes you have with your kids, whether it's meetings, whether it's skilling, whether it's practice, including player run practices. We call them PRPs. We still do that to this day. Where the players run it, you ain't even there. You may not even be around. When you start counting it, okay, we have this for this amount of minutes this day. And we do that 4 times a week, and the summer is 2 months. So, that's 8 weeks. You add that up, and then you add what you did in the spring, and then you add spring practice, you add spring drill, and you add 2 days. Then he counted those minutes throughout the year, and it provided perspective on maximizing every minute. I think that's something, and Coach Todd said it. I think that's something that I brought to SOC, and understanding when we were behind. And when we lose, Coach Todd actually figured that out last spring, with that, how we were behind schools that we were trying to beat, how you maximize that time, and you catch up, whether, during the season, out of season, everything building year round, it's important. And that's probably the biggest nugget that I got from Boise.
That's a nugget, Coach. I mean, because in essence, it's kind of like building your program almost like a professional way, if you will. Like That's my goodness.
Well,
I felt that was
the high school game emulates the college game, you
okay.
know, and you know, you go back 10, 15 years ago to mat drills. You know,
Okay.
everybody on the high school level started doing mat drills, diving around and
Mhm.
spinning over and all of that. And man,
Yeah.
you know, that was a college thing. You know,
Okay.
my brother was at. I could be wrong, but my older brother, not oldest, but my older brother was at Florida State, late '90s, early 2000s when they were doing it, and it's my understanding that they were one of the first doing it. Um, so you know that came down to high school. So people
Mhm.
still, when I first started coaching, people were still doing mat drills and stuff. We don't do that stuff at SOC. You know what I'm saying? But that our culture in high school football, especially Texas high school football, we try our best to emulate the higher level.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. So you finally get to sock coach. What was your thinking? Like that was the thing you said 6 or 7 years ago. What was your thinking when you got to South Oak Cliff? Like literally, like what was going through your mind? And walk
You
me
know,
through that.
and I'll go back probably about 8 months before I actually got to SOC. Um, I remember being at West Mesquite, and I've always been about the. I ain't gonna say always, but as I got into the profession and I learned more, I became more about the progression of Black coaches.
Okay.
um, just an understanding, you know, being in the inner city, being from the inner city, getting out there, listening to suburb coaches talk about the talent and the lack of coaching, you know, and just not understanding the process that people that they go through. You know, it's a battle everywhere. Um, everybody has different battles, and so, you know, just dealing with that and hearing it and seeing it. Uh, um, it was different, you know what I'm saying? And I wanted to get back. Thank you, baby. I wanted to get back to my roots and where I was from. And so going to SOC, you know, it was a choice I had made months prior. You know what I mean? Uh, um, Months prior, I knew I wanted to go back to the inner city. You
Okay.
know, we had beat, and to be specific and detailed, we had beat Wiley 60-7 at West Mesquite.
Okay.
And it
Okay.
was a really big deal. And I remember the feeling after the game. Marcus Shavers, who's the head coach at McKinney. And you know, I said I was gonna always tell these stories and be as transparent as possible. A lot of people hide from these.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
you
why I
know,
like you, coach, because you do that. Yeah.
yeah, they'd be afraid to offend
Yeah.
people, but man, we are in the world that we in. You know what I'm saying? And Marcus Shavers was the DC. Adrian Medice was the receivers coach, and you know, D. Anderson, the receiver, was a kid. He just finished, I think, from Alabama A&M. He went to LSU. Uh, he had 5 touchdowns, and I
Hmm.
think a few was called back. We won 60-7. They didn't get a first down till like the first or third drive of the second half. We were beating the crap out of them. Now,
Hmm.
this was a team that had went like to the regional final, lost 1 or 2 kids on offense. They were a big deal. I mean,
Hmm.
we killed them, and there was other people that played a role. But I just remember watching the AD and Mesquite Steve Bragg um, after the game. You know, congrats, coach, congrats, coach. And I remember watching him and our head coach Jeff Neal and our OC Seth Bell, you know, talking, kind of bask in the victory. And I remember thinking, like, you know, this kind of win, I want the credit. I want people to understand how big of a deal Black coaches play in these types of wins. I At that moment I knew I was going back to Dallas ISD. It was just a matter of where. It wasn't planned. It was I'm gonna get in where I fit in because you know just with what I learned. You know, guys like me, they normally stay in college. They get access to those resources. They stay in college. They make all the money. You know what I'm saying? For me, it was about high school, and I wanted to bring it back and strengthen where we stand in the profession. You know, because too often and this has been going on forever. When we win, it's because we're talented. You know what I'm saying? That's the perspective. That's what people say. You know, man, they got kids. You know, anybody that win got kids. You go
Yeah.
look at a state championship team. When you talk about 5A or 6A, they got kids if they want a state championship.
Yep.
And they probably did a really good job coaching. It's very rare you're gonna find a state champion um, um, win and they were average coaches. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Yep.
So getting back to SOC, man, it was a breath of fresh air. I think initially some of that um, just here was there. I remember our first year or two, we didn't have logos on our gear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You
What year was that, Coach? Was that what year we talking? 20 what?
It was fall 2014.
Okay.
It was fall 2014. Yeah, our first couple years, I remember not having logos on the gear. Our first year, we went 2 rounds. Our second year, we got a good playoff draw, and we went 3 rounds and lost to Mesquite Poteet. I think it was like 44-36, something like that, or 45-37, one of them. I mean, it was a good game, but with what we had, we played a ton of young kids on defense. Offense carried us that year. It grew as we went, as the staff, the quality of the staff, in my opinion, as it got better, and we all kind of started coming together. You started hiring guys who play for this coach or play for that coach. And it started coming together. And Coach Todd, man, he's rooted, and it becomes contagious how he is. You ever been around him? You ever heard him speak? That Dallas come out, man, and if you're from an area like that, he can bring you to tears. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Just talking about it and that stuff. So I think we now are, as a school, are a reflection of him and our principal and how rooted they are in our community in Dallas and all about Dallas. You know what I'm saying? So from the beginning, it was cool. I was glad to be back, but it became different, and for me, I'm somebody who always wanted to be in that situation at an inner city school. It wouldn't have been fulfilling if I was doing that somewhere else. And I'm just being completely honest.
No, and that's why we got this show, because you ain't gonna find a podcast where coaches feel as transparent and open. So, Coach, was that foundation already set at SOC initially, and it was that change that you talked about, kind of without, like I said, not throwing anybody on the bus. Like, what was that change? Was it just a better coaching, better what improved from that initial?
So I think the misconception for a lot of people, and again, this is my perspective, I think SOC has been a 15, 20-year project. A coach got fired. They were having cage fights or something like that.
Oh, wow.
I
remember that. Yeah. I think it was on the news, wasn't it?
Yep. 05-06. And Chris Gilbert got it. Okay. He's a SOC grad. And, the longer you're in this profession, you start to understand, when a guy gets a job and does a good job and progresses that job, the next guy don't have the same job as him. He's not getting it at that same point. It's an easier job.
Okay.
It may be the same amount of pressure, but it's an easier job. And so Coach Gilbert got it. And I think they went 3 rounds his 3rd or 4th year. I think he was there 4 years. He was there 1 year after they made a run, and then he went to Terrell. Now I'll stop there in hindsight and tell you where it's gotten. If Jason Todd left SOC for Terrell, people would think he was crazy or something would happen. You know what I'm saying? But that just tells you where it was. He kind of built it up and showed that it could happen. Runs in the inner city could happen, or runs at SOC could happen, because there was some runs being made. I think Skyline was getting rolling at that time. And then Kendall Miller got it, who's now at Frisco Emerson. I think he won like 8 games. And again, it was a stepping stone job. He was there 2 or 3 years. He won like 8 or 9 games. But what he did, and talking to people that have been around for that whole time, he made those kids feel like they were above those other Dallas teams. They may not have been an elite company, but they started beating, the middle of the road Dallas teams. And they were winning. He might have won 10 games 1 year. I know he didn't win a playoff game outside of a Dallas opponent for sure. But that's a step in the program. That's another step. And then Emmett Jones got it, and he started winning those suburb games. Yeah. So then those kids started, that community, those kids, they started expecting to win playoff games. I don't care who we play. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He progressed. He was there 3 years, and he actually went out. They lost in the regional final to the eventual state champion, Ennis. Okay. And then so when Coach Ty got it, he hired me. So I got there with him, and his big thing was we got to make sure we progress it further. And they kind of botched the hire. If you've ever heard him at the parade when he spoke, he said he wasn't chosen for the job. They chose somebody else. I think Emmett left in January to go to Texas Tech, and I think Ty was hired late March, early April. I know I was hired mid-April as a defense coordinator. I started going over there. that's 3-4 months. And you know anything about, you know, inner city neighborhoods, you know, black culture demands stability. So when a coach leaves and nobody in sight, they start leaving, you know, and then they're leaving searching out stability, you know, because what about my kid? That's the mentality. And they right for that. As a parent, they right for that.
Yep.
So, you know, we lost pretty much a lot of our freshman and sophomore kids before we even got the job.
Wow.
You know, so anyway, Ty got it. And that year, we again, the thing for me was, and I can speak to it, when we got in that first round of the playoffs, I remember we were playing Mansfield Timberview, and everything changed. Those kids changed. You know, the playoffs, it was like a different world. You ain't have to chase nobody for nothing. You didn't. Everybody was locked in. You could tell that it had been instilled. Them kids knew it was time. You know what I'm saying? And we ended up, you know, from other people's perspective, upsetting a Timberview team. We lost the next round to Marshall, but I did see that, and I think it took us to year 4 to get back to where Emmett had left it. You know what I'm saying? That year were seniors that played the second year as sophomores because of the lack of depth in the program. You know what I mean?
Let me stop you real quick, Coach, because I can tell you for to get rolling. For the people who may be listening from another part of the area, Coach Todd had came from Skyline, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what was he? Was he just the D coordinator there?
He was the defense coordinator at Skyline, and he came, Coach Emmett Jones last year, and he was more like a defensive consultant. You know, RJ Bond was the defensive coordinator. He was defensive consultant. You know, and in that last season where they went to the 4th round.
And then I want to ask you this. From an outsider perspective, Coach, how is that hiring process like, whether this be a Dallas or anybody else? I don't know if you know this, but how does that hiring process work? What's the hierarchy of it? Do you know?
I think I'm well versed in it at this point, you know, because I do a lot of research. I talk to people. I've been around a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? And it's the process, depending on your district, it could come down to the athletic director or the principal. You know, they have committees, but somebody has the final say in who's hired. And it depends on the school. It depends on the district. You know, for soccer at that time, it was the principal. You know, and he was hiring somebody that he had hired before at a school he was at. That's who he wanted. That was his guy. No matter whether or not somebody agreed with the fit or not, you know,
how important is that fit?
The fit is everything.
Okay.
You know, every coach can't coach everywhere. I mean, in spite of our egos and, you know, whatever we think, you know, it's like somebody that I know said to me, you know, all of these coaches that everybody aspires to be that win these titles and these back-to-backs, and they got 10 titles or 5 titles. You know, what did they do before they got to that school? You know what I'm saying? You that's what you got to look at. Is you know, the whole hiring process and winning titles is tied to resources and support. You know, it's some coachability and it's some talent that fall in there. But without that, the inner city schools in the state of Texas is prime examples. You know, without that stuff, you just spinning your wheels.
Was it always like that, Coach? Because, man, I love this stuff. I love this stuff, Coach. Just like the inner workings of it. A lot of these stuff is so superficial, but to me, we dive deeper. Was it always like that, Coach? And the reason I asked, because I think about, and that's really before my time, but a Carter back in the late 80s. Was it always like that, or did it transition to what it is now?
Well, I think when you start talking about, you're looking at a team like Carter in the 80s, that's before Black Flight. So the talent level that you're talking about, I mean, you're talking about a team, and I don't remember the year, but there's a Carter team between 88 and 91, 92 where, you know, backups that never played are going Power 5. Yeah. It's a different, you know, to today's times and talent level, it's a totally different arena with what they had. And it wasn't just that school. You know, a lot of schools all over was like that. You know, Plano was extremely talented at that point. You had a lot of places like that. So I don't think it's always been that way. I think now the talent is a lot more spread out, you know, more than people probably realize.
And nobody, Coach, this is what I don't like. And it's not a beef, but nobody talks about the why. So they may say, oh, this inner city school winning. To me, it's like charity. Nobody wants to really get why they winning. Why are they not winning? Nobody talks about the flight. Just like we said, it's like they may know it, but it's kind of like let's not hit on that. Let's just say this inner city school. And I'm like, why did it change? It's like everybody bypassed the why and just talk about the struggles.
It still wasn't coming. I mean, you got to think, and off the top of my head, I may miss the year, but take us this past season out, and it's only been Beaumont Bear. I can't remember the year. Coach Todd told me about one I didn't know about. I can't remember who it was. In between Houston Yates in 84 and Carter in 88. So since integration in 67 or 69, there have been 4 inner city titles before 2021. So that's a major issue in itself. It ain't got nothing to do with, even before Black Flight or before that, the thing about it is, and what people don't talk about is the rules that were put in place throughout these time periods to take Black talent to suburban or other schools. Like I can only speak to Dallas ISD, and I don't know if this was a statewide rule, but I know Dallas because my two older brothers went to Seagoville High School at W.T. White High School on majority minority transfers called M&M. Pretty much, if the majority population of your school was a minority, Black or Hispanic, you could legally transfer to a majority white school with the claim of better education, but it was their way of taking athletes. So you go back, you talk about Michael Carter at Woodrow, you talk about Tim Brown at Hillcrest. I may have that backwards. I think I had that backwards. You start talking about those Hall of Fame athletes and them being inner city kids and where they actually lived and them playing at those schools. It was policy put in place to be able to put that talent somewhere else.
My goodness.
They would hire the middle school coach that dealt with that kid at those schools to make him and the parent comfortable. Like, this is systematic stuff.
It is.
And it's stuff that a lot of people don't even know about. Again, my oldest brother graduated in 95. My middle brother graduated in 99. They went to schools on that same thing. You know what I'm saying? I was the first one of us, the baby of the 3, that went to Kimball High School, which is where we actually lived. So, that's like you said, a lot of the times people don't want to talk about that. It ain't never been no policy put in place where we can get this Highland Park white quarterback. That ain't never happened. Ain't never gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? But it's been the opposite throughout history, and that's stretched for time. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's just the reality of it. It may be uncomfortable for some people to talk about, but that's how the sport has been.
Coach, this thing is on fire right now. I mean, I'm not being dramatic. Because I've never heard of that, Coach. I'm 30 and I can't say I'm an aficionado because I'm not, but I never heard of that. So I know the average fan didn't. And does this tie into, I know last episode you talked about how many of the schools were academically ineligible. Does that tie into anywhere with this? Do you remember saying it?
What do you mean?
You remember when you were saying I forgot how you phrased it, but a lot of DISDs, I don't know if it was DISD, but
you probably talking about when they were what's the term? When they were basically almost about to be shut down because
does that affect athletics at all?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. It does. I mean, it happened at Spruce High School. Spruce High School, I remember, matter of fact, he was our O-line coach when he was our O-line coach when I was in high school. Melvin Lark, he was at Kimball. He got the head coaching job at Spruce, and they got rolling. He hired some young, good coaches. I dropped some names, and it'll put it in perspective for you now.
Yes, sir.
What was that, 05, 06? So that's what, 15 years later? Coach O, Coach O recruiting.
Yep.
DJ Mann, the head coach at Lubbock Coronado, they was on that staff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that happened, and the school closed down, so all those kids spread out. Some went to South Dallas, some went to Carter, some went to Hutch. And you start looking at some of those playoff runs, that talent that they had at that time, even Skyline, I think, was affected by that because it's still both Pleasant Grove.
Yep.
So some of those kids, they went everywhere and they were very talented and they were beating the heck out of people. So that's one of the examples of the school that shut down because of it. Our district has instituted magnet programs and collegiate programs, P-Tech, stuff like that. So now you started to pull in a different type of student. And so it's began to adjust. I don't know if any other schools are still in that situation. I haven't heard of it in a minute. So, however that happened, I'm glad it happened, I'm being honest.
And that just, like I said, I don't want to step my boundaries and stuff, but it just seemed like some of this stuff is whether it's education mixed with a little politics.
Oh yeah, everything's political. You know, it ain't no you can't. It is
But
what it is.
no, my point, coach, nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to. And I guess if you say it out loud, you become the bad guy, or that may hinder your chances of getting hired or something in the future. But it's like we don't keep it 100. Am I being honest, coach?
I mean, it ain't. One thing about us, you know, and again, from our principal all the trickling all the way down, we ain't shy about talking about that kind of stuff because we know where we are and we know we got to fight for our kids, and we know the perception, you know, of a lot of it, and the perception has been created, you know, from outside sources in a lot of senses. You know, we've been told how to think about the inner city, how to think about ourselves as Black people, how to it goes deep, and it is what it is. That's why I think a lot of why we having the success we having because, you know, we market ourselves different than the perception is. You know, people see us differently. You look at our social media, we got the best graphics, we got the best videos. You're going to know our program, you're going to know our kids. It's intentional and it's strategic because we know the perception that we're fighting against. You know, it's like you said, it's intentional. Don't get it twisted. There ain't no question about that.
And so everybody listen to this one. I believe by faith, you're gonna have college coaches, you're gonna have high school coaches, you're gonna have young coaches listen to this. So I mean, just understand this thing because coaches really laid it out there where I mean 9 out of 10 coaches won't go here, and I'm just being honest. So coach, let's get back to soccer. So you know, walk me through that 3rd and 4th year and kind of building that thing up. I sent you a comment that somebody left on YouTube and talked about, man, that they're well coached. You know, how did because coach, y'all don't have a lot of bunch of 5-star hype big guys, but y'all are well coached. Walk me through that process of building that foundation that we see today.
No, I think it's work. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I think it's maximizing time. More than anything, I think it's accountability of grown folks. You know, when you look at what Todd says after losses from Frisco, 2nd round, multiple years, Alito, whatever, it always came back to we gonna do better as coaches. You know, we're not gonna blame some kid for some play. We're gonna look at what we do fundamentally, systematically, and what we can be better at. And every year, I can say from the beginning we fixed a priority, and it has kind of come to where, you know, this year it still was this offseason been the same, you know, but year 3 we struggled offensively, and you know we changed offensive coordinators, and then that year 4 was the Alito year. Defensively, it was those seniors that had to play as babies. So we put everything in. That was when we got our nickname Death Row, you know, and we didn't choose it. You know, people started calling us that. we cats from the inner city who got a little edge to us, so we liked it. You know, we took it and ran with it. But, you know, we started playing real good ball defensively. And I think the Alito year we were high. You know, we lost, but we showed we belonged. We earned a lot of people's respect. And I think those next 2 rounds we got beat by Frisco. Because of small things, you know, that lack of attention to certain things that we needed to be better at, you know, and nothing more humbling than losing a game to somebody that you didn't think you should have lost to, you know, and so that, you know, that was 5 and 6, and then 7. I mean, I guess whatever we fixed, you know, made the difference, you know, and we won a title. So I mean, we were always on that cusp. You know, but losing those games, it puts you in that perspective where you kind of like, dang, or what am I doing wrong? You know, I thought we was, you know, in hindsight, it's like we didn't jump from bad to great, you know. So it was something that needed to be fixed. And I can't say, you know, Coach Todd, man, he a different type of cat. He gonna study himself and he gonna figure it out.
And congrats on that title again, man. I mean, what coach, the first inner city state championship since when?
1988, Carter.
Well, you know, and they don't necessarily count that, but
if you're somebody who don't count that, 84, Yates.
Okay.
Which those 2 teams, people continuously argue about being the most talented teams in the history. So, you know, nobody would argue 2021 soccer is on that level as far as talent. You know, so good to be in a class with them.
Yeah. Coach, how did y'all build such a organic culture? Does that stem from Coach Todd? Does it stem from South Oaks Cliff history? To me, it's organic. You can't fake it. Y'all got the support. Y'all, I've been around the sidelines. It feel like a HBCU almost, man. Like y'all have a lot of support to me. How did y'all build that culture?
Well, I think it starts with who SOC is, what SOC is. You know, when you start talking about, you know, when Ty started, it was actually Coach Ty. So this is where he plays the part. When he started saying "Return of the Mecca," the phrase "the Mecca," it's a Muslim thing, and it's a thing in Muslim faith. It's a place, a city where Muslims return. You know, after all the Crusades and all of that, and they come back to pray, and all of them return back to it. Well, where that ties into SOC, when you start talking about integration, you know, SOC was that one of those first places. It was SOC. I think Roosevelt was a black school already, if I'm not mistaken. SOC was that. So when you look at the way Dallas is made up, all the black people were in the bottom, which is next to South Dallas, and South Dallas. You know what I'm saying? James Madison had, which was formerly a Jewish school. We talked about that last time. And then Lincoln, those schools, I think Booker T was down there before that. But, you know, when integration happened, everybody pushed south. And SOC was that first school. So when you look at what Duncanville girls is doing now in basketball, SOC basketball girls did that. You know what I'm saying? They did that in the 70s, 80s. Their head coach was Gary Blair, who's the head coach at Texas A&M. You know,
wow.
SOC boys basketball did that. SOC boys track, SOC girls track. You know, that's where the Mecca comes from, because it only spread from SOC. You know, Carter's run happened as the flight continued. So SOC, Gary, they're gonna kill me for this, but SOC head coach got fired. White guy got fired by Ty's grandfather. You know, for lack of a better phrase, you know, he wanted a black coach. You know what I'm saying? And they were good, and he got fired, and it dropped tremendously. And a lot of kids went to Carter. They left and went to Carter. Well, that was like 84, 85. Think about when Carter run started.
Okay. Yep.
So Carter's title happened in 88. You know, so that's where that phrase, the Mecca, comes from. So it got a lot to do with that history. Those people now live in Red Oak, Duncanville, DeSoto, Cedar Hill, Lancaster.
Yep.
You know, those people now live there. And Todd being a historian, kind of, you know, token that phrase, return to the Mecca and the Mecca, and with the education and how things change through the collegiate program and the P-Tech and the school getting better. You know, a lot of those people, kids, they sending their kids back. You know, grandma still live over there. My mama went there. You know, they like, okay, they gonna go back, because they left trying to get away from it. You know, that's kind of how we've been conditioned to think.
Yep.
And so it's a combination of SOC's history, and if I'm being honest, a lot to do with Coach. We talking about football, a lot to do with Coach Todd.
Now let's eat away a little bit that. So Coach Todd, for the outsiders, you're under him you're working with him. I won't say under. Who is Coach Todd? Like, you know, what is he, if you could sum him up as a person and as a coach?
Probably one of the smartest people I've ever been around. Extremely intelligent. You know, he's from a family. You know, he grew up in South Dallas. He's from a family of doctors, lawyers, educators. You know, from granddad to aunts to uncles. That's what he's from. So he's been around. You know, he's been a fly on the wall for a lot of things that have happened in Dallas since the 80s. He knows that stuff. You know, his grandfather, they kept a lot of those artifacts, those Dallas artifacts, like I told you the last time we spoke. You know, he got that proclamation, that original proclamation from when the Jewish school's name changed to James Madison. You know, he has that stuff. So just he's extremely intelligent, authentic. You know, he is himself. He's never trying to be anybody other than himself. He's not trying to play the game and fit in nowhere he don't belong. You know, you know, and I think more than anything, man, he's really, really good with people. You know, he the people's champ everywhere. You know, it's hard to find somebody that's from or around where he is that doesn't care for Coach Todd. It's hard to find that. You
Yeah.
know, it is. He maneuvers people well. And it's not. I think he does that because it's not for selfish reasons. You know what I'm saying? It's all for the greater good in his mind. He's not trying to use anybody. That ain't his thing. He's where he is because of who he is. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Coach, how I want to ask it how and then which way is like the AD or the principal. We know it's important, but why is that important? As for a school that's trying to build.
The principal, in my opinion, is everything. And
Okay.
again, it depends on the school. In Dallas ISD, your principal is everything.
Okay.
It depends on who they are. You have policy that is in place, how they run their school. Is it athletics driven? Our principal isn't shy about saying it's athletics drives academics and vice versa. It's not just academics because like a lot of our students, are athletic driven. So, you get them bought in and they got great grades. Most of the time, everything shoots up,
Mm-hmm.
um, the principal is everything, though. Yeah, I can't state that. I can't understate that. The athletic director, depending on your district, is a big deal. Whether it's campus based or if it's an AD over as a whole. In Dallas, everybody plays a role. But if the principal ain't right, you look at especially football because football requires so many pieces to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're talking about contending for titles, for state championships. You look in Dallas and South Oak Cliff recently, and you look at Skyline when they had their run, when Samples was there, and you look at Lincoln when they had their run, and you look at who their principals were.
That's a nugget.
Yeah, when you look at who their principals were, it's no coincidence. It's not.
Oh man. Oh, I love this stuff, Coach. So let's talk about this. Are majority principals, and I gotta go here just because if I wouldn't, I won't be real. Are they African American? Or are they African American men? Or no? Or is that kind of a rarity now?
Well,
Or even then?
those three are African American men.
Yeah, but more for generally in Dallas or in is that like a,
It's pretty spread out.
okay?
It's African American men and women, Hispanic men and women, a few white men and women, depending on where you are. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Depending on your demographic. Personally, I'm a believer that to understand the culture of the customer. And when I say the customer, I'm talking about students and parents. You got to kind of be familiar with it as far as your background. So yeah, it's a mix. It just depends on where you are. At SOC, it's a black male. You know what I'm saying? And those three guys, they were black males, former coaches. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In those three situations, though, throughout time, where they've had success, where Dallas schools have had success in football. That seems to be the formula until somebody else comes along and
Yeah.
changes it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Guys, we're on the Hoodscout High School podcast. Hoodscout podcast will change the name with Coach Ward out of defense coordinator out of South Oak Cliff. Oh man, Coach. I don't want to keep you too long, but I got just a few more questions because I love this stuff, Coach. Let me ask you this. And it's a couple areas I want to go, but just you said that with the African American men. Let's speak to HBCUs, Coach.
Okay.
Give me your thoughts on they're kind of making the comeback now, but give me your thoughts on that. You've been on the other side, which A&M, $1 billion type, brand, all that. Are HBCUs important? If they are, why? Are athletes going to start going there? Let's kind of play with that a little bit.
I think it's important. My mom and dad are HBCU grads. I think they're very important. I think their story, I think they do a good job. From me, again, my freshman year being at Alcorn State University, which is an HBCU, then going to Louisiana Lafayette, I got to see both sides of it. It's through and I use Deion Sanders obviously as an example of what he's doing at Jackson State. No different than soccer. They've been seeing as stepping stone jobs. And once you get somebody who's going to be rooted in there, things start to change. I think our athletes going to those schools consistently will take more support from alums, from boosters. That's been a difference from my perspective and in my opinion. And somebody could tell me I'm totally wrong. I think that's been the difference, just financially. As we ask our athletes to go to HBCUs, we got to kind of put ourselves in those positions sometimes and understand the difference between going to the Big D1 and the HBCU, the difference in the living, the difference in everything. And I don't think it's bad or good. I think the perspective is slowly starting to change. And hopefully it continues. You know what I mean? Just being honest.
Well, yeah, and I was interviewing a coach from out of state who was a Southern alum, and he talked about the facilities and stuff wasn't the same, but the culture was so like a family, almost like an atmosphere.
100%.
Yeah. Do we think that NIL can play in this, whether it's positive or negative? Because that could be a whole nother can of worms opening. Do you think that's going to play in if these athletes go to HBCU or not?
Well, they can, but I mean, again, it comes back to those successful alumni. When you start talking about NIL deals, you're talking about successful people investing in that program. And how high profile a kid can be within that program. And when that starts happening, I think the HBCU plight is all in the boosters and alumni. How involved are we willing to get financially? You know what I'm saying? To push and drive that thing forward at whatever HBCU.
Yeah.
The more involved they are, the more the facilities will change.
Yeah.
Because the facility change has got to do with money raised.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if we having a gap in facilities, then we need to look at alums and stop looking at these kids to bail us out and just choose an HBCU because we saying that we should choose. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's real.
Kids are choosing when the older folks step up and start putting their money where their mouth is. And that's just the truth of it. I can't say it. Like I said, my mom and dad, the family, it ain't too many from that generation. At that time, they couldn't go nowhere else.
True.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So their brothers and sisters graduated from Grambling and Southern, and you know what I'm saying? That's my family. But there was no other option. It was right after integration, and we saw how integration was. People standing there throwing stuff at you. You know what I'm saying? And yelling stuff. And so they went where they belonged. As it has changed and started to evolve, and I think now it's time for us to kind of step in and raise up these 50, 70, $100 million facilities on these HBCU campuses. And then you'll start seeing them kids change. It won't be as much convincing needed as possible. You know what I'm saying? It won't be the same.
Yeah. And that's a good segue because God, I look at your school coach, and you have a guy like Malik Muhammad, and these guys that kind of carry themselves a certain way. Do the athlete feel like when they carry themselves a certain way, is that indicative of the culture, or that indicative of just their family dynamic and stuff like that?
Well, I think it all starts at home. When you say that, Malik Muhammad, his dad and his uncles all went to SOC. You know what I'm saying? When you look at Javon Thomas, his dad has been working at SOC for 12 years. Wow. When you look at David Sproles, his mom was an instructional coach at SOC when he came to SOC.
Wow. I didn't know none of that.
You're looking at, again, you're talking about people coming back, people who are rooted, people who invested. It ain't a kid, just random kid from somewhere going somewhere he just heard about or he was convinced to go to. You know what I'm saying? For us, it's different. So the way they carry themselves, it's a different type of pride in it. You and who they play for and those kind of things. It's a lot of pride there. For the grown-ups, and I think it trickles down to the kids. We do history lessons. Within presentations in the season and teaching these kids. Our kids have heard about majority minority transfers. Our kids know the disadvantage that the place they're at has been at. They know what they're fighting against, what people before them fought against. And that's something that we take pride in. So them kids walk around like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know what I mean? And people on the outside, they don't necessarily understand that. They don't understand the pride in it. Them kids know they got coaches that could leave at any moment if they chose to. Yeah. They know their coaches are there because they want to be there. They ain't guys just looking for the best job or the first phone call. They know who they play for, and that's a staff full of guys like that could be in other places, So them kids don't carry themselves like they're special because they are.
Yeah. Boy, and I think that's a nugget, coach. 'Cause I don't think that happens at 99% of other places. I don't know if people feel afraid or it's like we focus so much on athletics and then wonder why the kids aren't doing well in other areas because they're not really taught how to carry themselves. You know, and that's a nugget. That's a really deep nugget.
I think that's our profession, though. You know, I think guys in our profession are trying to move up and get the check. You know what I mean? And you know, early in my career, I heard the term selfish a lot in regards to kids. You know, and I always had a problem with it. And people that worked with me at different places can tell you, because I felt like grown-ups are selfish. You know what I'm saying? We take the jobs with the most money or the best situation or the most resources, and then we look at the kids like they should buy in or they should do exactly what we say, how we say. But you know that the neighborhood, the environment that I'm from, you know, a state championship ring ain't gonna get a kid a job. They're not gonna change their generational issues. They won't get them out of that situation. So, you know, for us, winning state was great. You know what I'm saying? And you achieve to be the best, but that's not why we came to South Oak Cliff. I mean, anybody that know us know that was never why we was here. It's great. Yay. You know, inner city, it's possible. It was awesome to do it, but we're about them kids, man, you know, and that's what makes it different. You know, people know that, you know, the community knows that. We're not shy about talking about it. We don't knock nobody else for trying to move up, trying to do better for their family, but you know, we in it for our community. And you look through our staff, if we got 12, 13 coaches, you know, 9 or 10 of them Dallas guys.
And I was about to say that's funny because this is my perspective, coach. I don't know if a coach can come from, let's say, out of town and create that organicness. I don't know if that's possible. Is it? Because to me, y'all got it because y'all were born in it.
I'll say, you know, I went to Kimball, and the from a playoff run perspective, the most successful coach in Kimball history is Daryl Jordan, who came from Lufkin.
Okay.
You know, but that's also a place who hasn't had a lot of playoff success.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you talk about Dallas history, I don't know Ernest James' background and where he's originally from. But if I had to guess, he probably is a Dallas guy. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Then you go all the way to 04 in Lincoln. Samples is a Dallas guy. He from Highland Hills. You know, somewhere over in that area, went to SOC. Then you go to Skyline and all them runs, that's Samples. With Emmett Jones, who's a Dallas guy. Todd, who's a Dallas guy. Then you go to SOC. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, I think it's I'm not going to say it's not possible, but I think it's a merit to it because the way the inner city works, first of all, you talking about feeder patterns and them being non-existent. You know, our feeder patterns aren't what your typical schools are. You know, if high school programs are thriving, it's because people are bringing their kids back to where they're from. Okay. That's not it doesn't work. It's no one universal thing where it's like, you know, well, this school has 3 feeder schools and they get all their kids from here and there. When you talk about inner city, it's all relationships and it's trust and it's do I know you're gonna be there to take care of my kid, you know? And you ain't gotta. I think the misconception is a lot of people think it's promises that got to be made, and there ain't no promises got to be made. But it speaks to what you've been doing. How long you been there? Are you trying to find another job every year?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You ain't gonna get kids. Not gonna come to you. You know, but if I have a child and like I have 2 girls and my girls will probably be inner city kids and they're gonna go wherever it's rooted and the education is right. You know what I'm saying? That's just the reality of it because kids move so much in the inner city. You know, you have a kid Dallas. Coach Todd is, I think, 45-ish, and he never went to school where he lived until high school.
Wow.
So whose kid was he actually? You know, same with me. I'm 37, and you know, I went to Rosemont, which is which is a Sunset School. Then I went to T.L. Marsalis, SOC, Tyler Street Christian Academy, which had its own high school. T.L. Marsalis, SOC, Atwell, Carter, and then I went to Kimball, which is where I live. Okay. So that's how the inner city dynamic is, and a lot of people don't necessarily understand that.
Yeah. Coach, man, I love this. We're 52 minutes in. We're gonna talk a few more minutes, man. I love this. We're talking with Coach Ward, defense coordinator at South Oak Cliff High School in Dallas. Coach, What about the suburb schools? Let's hit on that a little bit. You know, everybody talks about, oh, the inner city is so hard, so hard. What about these suburb schools that building these, you know, gigantic facilities? And it's gonna sound dumb. What's the difference between that suburb school and that inner city school? Or how are they able to do that? Is it just different economic base? Let's talk a little bit about that.
I think a lot of it has to do with they are one school towns. You know,
Oh,
you look at Dallas ISD is 22 athletic participating schools, and then
true.
high schools, and then you go up in the academics, it's even more. But Duncan, I can only speak about our side of town, Duncanville, DeSoto, Lancaster, City Hill. They are one horse, one town. So all the taxes go into one building. You know what I'm saying? I think the facilities, that's where that happens. As far as the athletic success, you know, I think coaches that their destination jobs because of athleticism, you know, athletes and resources. But it's stuff that comes with that. You know, it's a battle everywhere. You know, and that ain't just on the south side of Dallas. I think it's anywhere. You know, the north side, Highland Park. We all got our battles, and you know, it goes into community and culture of your customer. You know, if it's a natural selfishness to that, how do you break that? You know, if it's a selflessness, you know, how do you feed off of that? How much athleticism do you have in that? You know, is it a destination where you can get good coaching? Because coaching is everything. You know, when you talk about X's and O's, or you talk about skill development, or you just talk about mentoring, you know, you start combining all of those things, and those and places are a lot more equal, depending on who you got on your campus. You know, Reginald Sample's been successful everywhere he been.
True.
You know, he done made a state run everywhere he been. You know what I'm saying? That's not common in this profession. Again, if you go Gary Joseph from Katy, you know, he got all them titles. I worked with his son, Scott at A&M. He was a defense coordinator at Katy for 22 years before he was the head coach. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people, you know, look at a guy like him and want to be him or want to be seen as him in history. But are you willing to be patient and be humble enough to be the coordinator at your school for 22 years?
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Or are you going to take that first head job when people start calling you? What are you in it for? So, you know, the difference depends on the person. You know,
Yeah.
I think everybody got their goals. And I think we kind of showing it can be done anywhere. It just depends on who you got. You know, if you got a leader that can get people bought in and people want to work for them, you know, like we have, then it's possible. If you got somebody who's just jumping job to job, eventually you hit that spot where the situation ain't ideal and you ain't in a situation that's set up to win, and then they struggle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's something about that struggle that prepares you for success later.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's gonna happen whether you in the richest suburb or the poorest inner city. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a powerful point. I didn't know that about Katy, head coach, and I know I was reading a story on Ennis. They got an assistant coach that's been there for over I think 20, 30 years. So you know that's powerful in building that thing. You need that continuity. Coach, is there a big pay scale for assistants? Like what you can what like the budget wise, like I can go get the best coaches. Is that in different districts? The pay scale, is that a big difference?
I think it's a competitive market. You know, different. A coach in Dallas at another school that I worked with before that I'm close to, you know, he was telling me it's hard for him to leave Dallas just because it's going to be hard for him to make the money he makes, because Dallas actually plays coaches pretty well now.
Oh wow.
So you know, it depends on where you are. You know, it's different people, and some districts have it to where, you know, they can distribute money as they please. It's not a set amount that this spot will make. So if this coach is valued more, he may get a whole lot more money than everybody else. You know what I mean? I just think it's the situation that you're in, and how much the people value is more. That's more important. How much do you value where you are? If you value a lot, they're gonna make sure they take care of you to where you won't have much of a choice to stay around. You know what I'm saying?
That's good. That's a nugget. All right, man. Let's I want to ask you this. Let's get back to soccer a little bit. Y'all won that state championship. How you feel, coach? What's the goal now?
You know, the same. You know, we're gonna try to make sure these kids get in school and stay off these streets. You know, that's priority. You know, like I said, winning state was awesome. We're gonna try to win it again. We know what we achieved as an inner city school winning the state championship. We take a lot of pride in that, but it ain't what makes us. You know what I mean? It's something that'll never be able to be taken away. And kids will be state champions for the rest of their lives. But again, you know, a state championship don't change a kid's family makeup.
That's real.
Scholarship does. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's our priority. That's always been our priority. You know, we're going to do the job that we're supposed to do as coaches just because we take pride in it. We know how much we are driving Black coaches forward by what we're doing. You know, I've seen, you know, it brought me to tears listening to the Houston Heights coach in an interview with Tepper on Texas football at a clinic, I think 2 weeks ago. You know, he brought us up and just, you know, it's an older guy and how we give him hope and how we gave his kids hope, you know, and they talked about it. So, you know, that was the biggest part of the title. You know, just people seeing that it can happen. You know, it's some cats that went off and played ball or didn't play ball that went somewhere and learned and got some information that will come back and take pride in winning in the inner city, mentoring inner city kids.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, we ain't satisfied. You know, I remember Sunday, Coach Todd and a couple other coaches jumping in the chat like, "All right, what's next? Like, let's move on." You know what I mean? And that was Sunday. We won Saturday.
Yeah.
Party Saturday, Sunday, ready to move forward. And I think the kids, they've taken the same perspective. They still gonna be kids. They still Hollywood. You know,
Yeah.
they're gonna be how they are. But when it come time to bite, they gonna bite. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm just grateful how the city got really behind y'all, man, and that gave the community some pride. I mean, I know you felt that, but I ain't just talking about Oak Cliff and I'm talking about the whole city felt a pride that I haven't seen that before, Coach. To be honest, I have never seen that.
I think a lot of that has to do with who we are. You know, I think. Like I said, we promote and market who we actually are as a program. People see that whether they Sox fans or somebody we got to play, and you can't do nothing but respect it. We're going to be who we are. We are authentically ourselves. You know, we take pride in being Black men. We take pride in being inner city coaches. And people see that, and we're going to do it our way. We're not trying to conform to what people tell us a coach should be. How a coach should act. We're gonna jump in the Facebook group and argue with your mama. We don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's who we are. That's what I would be doing if I didn't coach. I still be jumping in there arguing my opinion on what Kimball is doing or Sock is doing or whatever. You know what I'm saying? We're not gonna change that. We're gonna be as respectful as we can, and we also have the support of our principal and athletics leadership who allow us. I ain't gonna say allow us, but they accept us for being who we are because we're gonna be who we are. You know, this didn't make us or change us into being, you know, I think often in this profession, as Black men and Black coaches, we've always been told how we should behave and how we should abandon some of our cultural things in this profession because it's frowned upon. You know, that's not how we operate. We're going to be how we are. And you know, we take pride in that. So people saw that, you know, the all white, that come from a coach, you know, who worked at SOC, Coach Hill. He passed away my fourth year. We're going into my fourth year in the summertime. He wore all white every day, you know. So initially, the first time we played Skyline, we wore all white, you know, to honor Coach Hill. You know, I never knew him, but other guys did. And, you know, people liked it, you know, because that's a Black culture staple. You know, you got to, that's that uncle with that pocket full of change.
Real talk. Real talk.
People know that. You know, people saw it and they like, man, that's cool. You know, because people, I remember my first job, man, in Lincoln. I remember the kids, you know, spatting and or wearing different color armbands or wristbands. And I remember an older Black coach kind of chastising them and making them take it off. You know, everybody different. You know, but individualism is okay. You know, that's the reality of it. We ain't from them backgrounds where everything is uniform and drawn out for us. You kind of got to find yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we embrace that. We allow our kids to be themselves. And a lot of coaches have reached out since after we won it, you know, whether they coach in the suburbs, a head coach or coordinator or assistant or inner city, you know, people were inspired that, you know, you can do it our way. You know, you can embrace our culture and still have success in football. And that's something in our state, you know, that hasn't been driven forward, you know. So it's a big part of that why it was such a turnout. You know, we knew it was going to be that way. Ty said it in the interview in summer at coaching school. And, you know, that was probably the biggest thing for me personally, just looking up in them stands, you know, 30 minutes before kickoff and seeing all them people like, oh yeah, this finna. And I know a bunch of people late. This thing finna,
Yeah,
you know. So it was big, man. I got a picture that's my cover photo on Twitter. I look at every now and then with all them people in that white with their hands up at the end of the game.
Yeah,
it was big. It
yeah.
was big, man.
Do you, coach, to piggyback off that? Do you think people respect when the black men as coaches can be who they are, or do they fear that? And then the part two of that is, how do y'all guys keep that unity there? Because y'all got a unity. I see you smiling. What you laughing at?
I think it's both. You know what I'm saying? I think depending on somebody's background, they can respect it. Yeah. And I think depending on somebody's background, they can fear it. You know, ain't nothing like a confident black man. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, throughout our history, we've as a people been, you know, led to be not as confident and to always want to fit in and follow behind other cultures. So I think it's embraced by some. You know, I think it's growing. We ain't necessarily trying to change it. We just being ourselves.
Yep.
But you know, I think I laugh because I think about the different reactions you get. You know, when you see people, when you meet people, you know, when you know people that are a part of certain staffs, you know, how they interpret it, you know. But I mean, like I said, man, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. Coach, how y'all get that? How are y'all so unified as a staff? And this is just me looking on the outside in, but how do y'all maintain that unity of, to me, selflessness?
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that that when you're talking about the staff and the makeup of the staff, Coach Todd coached the linebacker coach.
Okay.
I coached the DB coach. One of the D-line coaches, the other linebacker coach I worked with at Lincoln, he worked for somebody who like mentors us all. Okay. One of the D-line coaches I grew up around, you know, he's my oldest brother's age. The receivers coach I trained with when we were playing ball, he was in Canada. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Makeup it's not just, you know, this fight came open, we posted it. A bunch
That's strategic. Yeah.
You know, we hired a guy, he's a stranger. You know, most of our 80-90% of our staff, there are some ties. And you know how it is where we from, somebody vouching for you.
Yeah.
You know, somebody that has that's reputable, that people respect is vouching for you. So with that, you know, I think it's a lot of continuity on the staff. We still have our disagreements and backdoor arguments because we all are passionate about what we do. True. But, you know, I think the goal is still the goal. And that's why the staff, we don't have a big staff turnover. It's hard. You know, it's hard when you work with people that you care about, that you're friends with, that you respect, that you know where you stand with, more than anything.
Yeah.
You know, once you experience that, it's hard going back to playing that game. You know what I'm saying? And not being able to operate within being who you genuinely are, and worrying about offending somebody just because you ain't smiling that morning. You know, that's stuff we go through that people don't want to talk about when you go to different places. You know, I've experienced it, and it's hard. It's hard leaving comfort. You know what I mean? It is.
And that's a nugget. And I mean, because in essence, think of how many coaches have to go through that. And that it's like you got to bury that. And internally, it's that might mess up your health. Internally, having to always fake it till you make it. Like, that can't be healthy for you.
And the tough part, you know, I was having this conversation with a coach. The tough part about that is genuinely when a lot of suburban programs hire us to manage the kids and to manage the parents. It may be one guy, it may be two guys, maximum three guys, and that they're constantly leaning on that one guy. And if he goes overboard by their standard, you know, he's on the line because he's always the one dealing with the kids. He's the one building the relationship, and a kid is a kid. If a kid flips on him, you know, now his job is at risk. So, you know, for us, we got a staff full of guys who deal with people, who deal with us. You know what I'm saying? It's less maintenance, and that's a window for some of us to get jobs. You know what I mean? Whether head coaches or assistants, and I respect that, and I think cats should embrace that. You know, but for me personally, you know, it feels good having a bunch of cats that handle situations, and it ain't always referred back to me. I ain't always got to pull black kids to the side and, you know, have a side talk with them. You know, it's a luxury. It is, and it's comfortable, and it's good to know another man got your back, man.
Yeah, man. Woo, man, we just I think I'm gonna end with this one, Coach. I want to talk about your experience on at we're gonna this last question. Talk about your coaching. I told you I was gonna talk about this at the coaching clinic.
Okay.
Talk about a little bit what you talked about and really,
yeah. One in Lubbock, or
the one in Lubbock, or really any of them. I mean, y'all been on the tour circuit, man, between you and Coach Todd. I mean, y'all been everywhere. So how's that been? And let's dive into that for a little second, real quick.
You know, I've never been to West Texas. So, you know, it was an experience. You know, I know some guys. One of the cats that pretty much mentors me in the profession, that's a little older than me, a good friend of mine. He actually coaches at Texas Tech. So I spent a lot of time with him. Of course, I know Coach McGuire. So, you know, it was a good experience. The actual clinic, you know, it's been a warm welcome. You know, I've never really been too much of a clinic guy. I typically have went to the DFW clinic and coaching school in the summertime, where everybody goes, whether it's in San Antonio or Houston or whatever. Last year was in San Antonio, but you know, this year I've been to 2. You know, that was my first time going to that one, and no, I've been to 3. I went to SMU on Wednesday, so the reception has been warm. I think people are genuinely excited for us. You know, I think most people understand what we've achieved. You know, a lot of people respect it. You know, even before we actually won a title, a lot of people would stop you, you know, at those places and kind of talk to you and be transparent. Like, man, the job y'all do, you know, such and such, you know, close. I have some friends in the profession who's like, well, if y'all figure this part out, y'all gonna win it, and y'all should win it, and I'm rooting for you, you know. So it was nice. You know, I met the head coach of the team that we beat in the semifinal. Cool guy, you know what I'm saying? He was very complimentary, and I actually spoke. You know, I've never liked clinics because people keep it so general. They don't really want to give anything. But because I was going to West Texas, I picked the first slot, and I made a presentation where I was giving a lot, and I did that because I'm the guy who would miss the 8 o'clock guy. Yeah, I ain't getting up. You know, I'm on vacation if I'm at a clinic. I'm going to learn. I'm picking some guys out, but if it's 8 o'clock, depending on how much fun we had hanging out the night before, it depends on if I'll be there. But it was cool. You know, even after that, a lot of guys. Talked to a lot of guys, met a lot of guys. You know, J.O. posted a lot of quotes on Twitter. I kind of had to tell him, like, stop posting all my quotes on Twitter. They should have came. You know, they wanted to hear it, you know, but it was cool. You know, guys like that came out to support.
Yeah.
You know, they told me ahead of time they were going to be there. So it's been a good experience, man. You learn at those things. You take nuggets from people, and you just genuinely, you know, you feel the warm reception of what's going on, and it's encouraging because it makes you want to keep pushing forward and driving. You know, the crazy part is the reception lets you know how unexpected it is. On the flip side of it, you understand that it needs to keep happening, and hopefully it spreads. And more inner city coaches, you know, more black head coaches, they have that level of success where, you know, it becomes the expectation for the masses to happen, you know, not because of where they are or what school they at.
Let's end with this one, Coach. What advice would you give to either this African American head coach who's coming up, to this principal, to this school administrator? How can we better this thing realistically? Like, because we know that it's some things that need to be fixed.
Right.
I don't want to necessarily tell you guys say how, but what's some ways we can truly improve this thing?
I think, and I start from a principal perspective. I think it requires some understanding of athletics and how athletics drives the culture of your campus. If you don't understand that as a principal, you probably will struggle dealing with athletics. That's very important. From a head coach perspective, and I've never been a head coach, so I try not to act like I understand what that seat is like. I do work for a head coach that's very transparent and involves a lot of people and allows people to step into the roles. Um, just the different head coaches I've worked for on a high school level, on a college level. I think it's being straightforward, depending on who you are, depending on who you have, where you are, how straightforward you can be. The different environments require different things, but being transparent, the guys knowing where you stand, being upfront. If you have an issue or you an expectation that's not being met, addressing it straightforward but respectfully. And I'm more so speaking on what I've seen, how I've seen Coach Ty get a bunch of grown men to buy into him and not want to work for nobody else but him. You know what I'm saying? The management and understanding of people, understanding you can't man, you won't be able to build the big relationship with everybody, every parent, every kid. You need help. If you're trying to force that just because of your title, you're gonna run into some issues. And that's, I think that's universal depending on where it is. Again, I can only speak to what I've seen. I haven't decided to step into that seat up to date, but I think that's a big part of it. The hiring process, who you hire, how you hire, and how it plays into it. But the support from the principal and all of that other stuff is a big deal too. So
Wow.
I think it's you went to Mesquite High, right?
No, I actually went to Skyline and
Oh,
Ville.
Skyline, okay.
Yeah, I was Skyline and Ville. I'm out there supporting them now because of Coach Harris and whatnot. But no, I went. I was there.
Their principal. I was saying that to say they got a principal that is like that.
Yeah.
I knew him when he was in AP, and I see him publicly. And when you got that kind of support, it's hard not to be successful. It's hard. Right. You know what I mean? So just finding those guys.
I love this, Coach. Let's take it a step further. Would there be anything like who's above the principal? Would that be who?
In different districts is different. In Dallas, it's called the ED, the executive director.
Would you have any wise words for them?
Yeah, it depends on who your principal is and how much leeway your principal gets. You know what I'm saying? That I think we have a good one, Tracy Washington. She supports, and I think she does a really good job with our principal, working hand in hand and allowing him to kind of be how he is. Our feeder pattern, I work at the feeder pattern Val Story, one of the schools, and my principal does a great job understanding and supporting, everything and keeping in mind, that the kids and being everything being in alignment, from academics to athletics. So, it requires, man, when we say it takes a village, we understand, it does. And I don't care where you at, sometimes it's within policy to where it has to be vertical aligned. But where we are, it's a lot of people that are selfless and humble. And when you research these people's backgrounds, they're from these environments. They understand it. They understand how what the kid does in 6th, 7th, 8th grade feeds into what they do 9th, 10th, and 11th, 12th. So it's just getting everybody on one page. And when you look at a team or a school that's a constant contender, it's a reason. It ain't because of one person. It ain't because they got Cam Newton. You know what I mean? Cam Newton only there 4 years.
True.
You know what I'm saying? When a team is especially in football, I stumbled and said something talking to some friends. Basketball, track, I played both. My background is track mostly. Putting successful track and basketball seasons and programs together, it's like building a bicycle. You know what I'm saying? You need the 2 wheels, your handlebar, your chain. If you're fancy, you got your brake. If you're old school, you stop yourself. You know what I'm saying? Well, football like a car. You know what I mean? It requires so many small pieces that if one is missing, it breaks down and stop on you. Overheat. So football is very different than any other sport, which is why, the inner city, because of the structure and lack of policy in place to make it all vertically aligned and so forth and so on. That's why it's been so rare. You know, whether you're being carried by talent level or carried by coaching or carried by this, eventually it comes to a head, and you got to figure out what's missing, and that's in any environment. You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, man, it's that those people, you know, that ED, those middle school principals and APs, that the people on the campus who manages whatever, you know, we got a village in place that is second to none, you know, from top to bottom. It's been in place for a while. These people have been in their positions for at least 4 years, you know, when I think about the people I'm talking about. So, you know, hopefully we can keep all of that in place. And if somebody, you know, moves up or moves out, hopefully somebody behind them is being developed, because that's when you know you got it done the right way. You know, our office coordinator, who had been in college before, took a college job, and somebody else from inside moved up. And if we still keep having the same success, we know we on the right path.
Yeah.
You know, one guy leaving don't just kill the whole thing, because that happens a lot too in our profession.
Yeah, you have a lot of turnover. And I guess that's a good thing. Once you start having turnover, that means you're doing something right. Yeah. Wow. Over an hour plus interview, man. You done emptied your pockets of these nuggets, coach. This part 2. So I just thank you for coming on, man. Go spend time with your family, and you know, I'm gonna share this podcast, you know, when we edit it up, and I'm probably gonna share snippets tonight because you dropped some nuggets. So I just appreciate you, and I think
we appreciate you, man. We appreciate you and what you're doing. You know, it ain't a lot of people on your side of it that are giving multiple people voices. You know what I'm saying? That's just not common in the profession. You know, you talking to kids, you talking to coordinators, you talking to assistants, you talking to head coaches. So you know, when you start doing that, you start getting into the thick of why people and programs are successful. And
yeah,
we commend you for people notice, people see you. You know, you hopefully you keep growing in this thing. You know, and make sure your circle right. You know, because a lot of that's a big part of your side of it. You know what I mean? But we appreciate you, man, and I appreciate you. You know,
hey man, hey, it's just me and God. We on autopilot, man. I ain't got a big circle, so we gonna ride it to whatever happen. But hey, coach, I appreciate this one, boy. You dropped a lot of good stuff, and you know, I'm gonna share all that good stuff. So appreciate you. Take care, and go spend time with that fam, man.
All right, Doc.
All right, take care.